Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. As we continue to enter into the month of August, I'm reminding of the difference this is in community. We had several guests come and share their insight and how they felt community and how it impacts us in our overall stability, overall wellness. And, the same token, in August, we celebrate the state's National Wellness Month, which prioritizes one's own self care, how do we manage stress, and how we promote a more healthy routine. I've said this before, sometimes the hardest sentence to say as an adult or anyone is that you need help. Today, I will be the one sharing some insight from what we may have already covered and maybe some areas that we have not as we continue to press forward. Um, uh, and before we do, I'd like to give a disclaimer. If you are in the States, 988 is a suicide crisis lifeline. I encourage those wherever they are in the neck of the woods, whether in the States or outside, to find what works, what resource may be helpful, what community might be helpful for you to ask or kind of be willing to say, I need help. So, again, find more resources wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching this. Um, I've said this and used similar quotes for those who've been on the podcast this month, but the emphasis, um, well, not really the emphasis, but I'm going to kind of share more of my insight of what I feel some of these quotes may mean, how they may help us, or how at the very least let us dive deeper into what may help us. From David Spangler, he said, some people think that they are in a community, but they are only in proximity. True community requires commitment and openness. It is the willingness to extend yourself, to encounter and know the other. Communication is, at least from my perspective and working mental health field, being a leader in church, being a son, being a husband, being a friend, communication takes work. It's something, from my perspective, something that it's not so that we can just assume happens. And I feel is part of the, I guess, it's funny. It's sometimes it's overlooked. It's intangible. We don't spend a lot of time. I don't say, "Oh, did I communicate well?" Most traditionally, we just assume we do, and unfortunately, sometimes a lack of forethought or reflection can cause more subtle problems later on. From my own experience and what I've seen. The assuming that communication hasn't breakdown, assuming that cultural differences, how we speak to one another, whether it's age, race, sex, or what have you. There's a social economic idea also of how we see others who are less fortunate. When you're walking down the street and you see someone who is homeless, do you walk to the other side? This is not a judgment, it's just more of recognizing more about you. And I remember a lot of times, sometimes I ask myself, why do I do things? But I'm trying to also ask the question, what am I afraid of? So I feel this quote really kind of brings to light some of the mixed misconceptions of how we think community is brought about. Um, I feel also reading of history that, traditionally communities were more organic, in the sense that we weren't crammed into an overpopulated sector. Um, some may argue that during the Industrial Revolution, how people had flocked to the cities to make success in some ways were more disconnected, even with more people around them. Um, and when I think about, we're talking about supporting our communities, and when I think about National Wellness Month, a lot of times we think we need more. Everything on media, everything when it comes to, oh, only if I get this. I do love what this word is from, untranslatable word from book my wife has. It's from Hindi, and it says Jugad. It says ensuring things happen even with minimal resource. Sometimes we try to challenge ourselves. There's some strange thought that less is more. Sometimes I feel it's more important how I feel and how I think of um, um, the idea of having less and more that may trigger and may germinate something more stable, more sustainable. It's not just purely challenging myself to have minimal resources, but accepting it. The idea is, I feel it's deeper. At least what I found more helpful. Um, Sometimes, let's say, um, defining what socially means for you. A lot of times, at least from my experience personally, it can be dictated by others, even with the best intention. But sometimes less can be more. And when I think about community, um, we have to define that, at least from my perspective, to get a better idea. I may want to socialize, but knowing me, I know there's a fine line of what type of socializing and what would be helpful in the given time. But I think those are kind of questions of that has helped me when I'm thinking about my community and how it relates to me. Another thing I mentioned in some of my some of the guests who come this month was the idea of wabi sabi. It's Japanese noun, finding beauty in imperfections, acceptance of the cycle of life and death. I feel for me, this word, um, I feel, well, at least what has helped me is the idea that most everything we're doing, our relationships, our work, um, is kind of unfinished. There's always that kind of process. It's like life is lived in between things we're trying to do, places we need to be, places we would like to be. So I like the idea that we are content of the incomplete. Our lives are kind of constantly in this transition. There's definitely milestones I remember, just maybe graduating high school for those, or school starting again for a lot of people, or it's about to start, or getting married, other milestones. However, the work continues. The relationship continues. But those singular life events are important to be reminded. However, I do feel being okay with the incompleteness or the imperfection. At least for me, it has changed my vantage point. So the need to kind of have more, or I guess the emphasis of just being and then reassessing what it means or what is important for me when it comes to how I relate, how I socialize, how I move forward. There's a word in Korean, same book, just to let you know, it's the same book, um, untranslatable words. It's from Nunchi, the subtle, often unnoticed art of listening and engaging in others' mood. Um, Growing up in mostly spent more time with my Korean side when I was growing up. Um, the intentionality, and I think there's very positive things when you think about community and understanding it and listening, engaging others, and being cognizant of those around us. I think for me, it has helped, kind of, in the way of understanding um what community looks like, and for me, and what things I may like and what things I may not like, and also being cognizant that not generalizing someone's experience or situation. However, understanding your limits and struggles, and eventually, if we're able to, if we're reminded to set boundaries. We're just one person, and just one person trying to do life. Um, Kurt Von Gut, sorry if I mispronounce your last name. He says it's an interesting thought exercise when it comes to how we relate, but he really focuses on young people. And he says, what should young people do in their lives today? Many things, obviously, but the most daring thing is create stable communities in which terrible disease and loneliness can be cured. It's a lofty aspiration or goal, but I do like they emphasize that the terrible disease of loneliness. I Disease and loneliness may seem heavy, but I can say from personal experience and what I've seen in the line of work I do, but also in churches as a leader, that loneliness cripples. um, I feel sometimes even the most healing thing could just be a listening ear, um, to those who are struggling. So, in the community, as you see, you may not have the tangible resources or the facts or know what to say, but being present can do a lot when it comes to the idea of loneliness. You know, I think one thing that gets stripped when someone has a disease or something that's unknowable, well, not traditional in the sense that people understand, even in a general way, what happens is dehumanization. Well, this person has this, and there's always this kind of justification of why the person has it. And that justification, that diagnosis, eventually um, takes away the person's identity in some cases, and that dehumanizing, um, I guess, trend can actually make this loneliness feel heavier. Uh, I can only speak from experience. I may have seen certain aspects of this, but I think one of the big steps forward for me is to step forward in the idea that I'm still Robert. I may have certain things I'm struggling with, but I'm still Robert. So that idea, that concept, that it doesn't um, constantly define me, and this is where change, at least from my personal experience, can be motivating, inspiring, and actually encouraging. That everything that I'm feeling right now, everything that is going on right now, is not in permanence. There's things will and can change. Um, and I think thinking of notable um, celebrities like Robin Williams and how he expressed this commentary. He could be around a lot of people. Like the idea that loneliness is serious. I would say some of the most rash decisions well, no, just speaking generally from personal experience, was in high school or in, at younger years, when everything felt like this was a nexus point where if I don't do this now, that's it. My life is over. Um, I want to go to see this. If I don't, my life is over. And it seems petty, but I feel that um, there's a lot to learn and unpack when you think about that. When you think of our own lives, we could be very dismissive, but when is there really ever time for filling the name? And I'll say, when is there ever an emphasis or time to, for me, when is there time for Robert? Now, granted, everyone's life and what they're going through is vastly different. But from my experience, work, personal life, as a leader in church, is if you don't put the emphasis on you, no matter how effective you are, that may not sustain, and eventually it will catch up at times to you. And the progress, all that good work you've done, will be harder for you to do, or the individual to do, because they did not take time for them, in the sense that they were saving the world but not themselves. Um, kind of answer this. How can we better help those in need in our community? What have I seen helping the community and what have not? Well, I think this is a packed question. I think, um, what can we better? How can we better help those in need in our community? We'll define what we can help, and also, um, fiscally, that's out of our hands a lot. Even in the government and where you're at, um, some things get pushed more than others, addressing the immediate need. But however, what can we do better help? Well, there's a concept of being kind versus being nice. The idea is be kind to those. Nice is sometimes can be very more self driven. I want to be nice so I'm liked. But being kind, if you're feeling well, pass it on. Be kind to the person. Maybe he's having a hard day at getting your order right at the restaurant. You have nowhere to be. I would encourage those, and if you're able to, pause and recognize this person's struggling and be kinder. What have I seen work in helping the community and what have not? Communication. Um, I think one of the most de-escalating kind of attributes we have as human is defining and recognizing we are human. Whatever I know, whatever success, whatever, not even faith based. When I just think about, um, we're we're exceptional and unimpressive at the same time. Um, that is us. That is humans. So I try not to take myself too seriously. But when I'm speaking to someone, when I'm talking to someone, friend, family, whoever, is recognizing that helping people can be inconvenient, and it may be. Um, but it's important. So sometimes we could think of ourselves more. This is taking my time, but you had a choice to help the person or not. And sometimes it's not that you don't want to help. I'm just saying this from my own perspective, from my experience. Sometimes it's just you just don't have time. And I would say being honest with yourself and the individual that you can help, as much as it can be just uncomfortable to say, paints a better picture. Because at the same time, if you say yes to everything, eventually you're saying no to yourself. And you're saying, my value, what I'm doing, only matters if I'm helping someone else. Myself could sit in the corner. I'm not going to take care. And when they talk about self care, that is kind of what we're really addressing. Um, I use a lot of things that kind of help address the body in the sense of breathing techniques, slowing down my breathing if I feel things are bubbling up. I did progressive relaxation. It takes time, but it does kind of de-escalate. I also have started doing some more EFT tapping. Kind of sometimes I feel, at least from my personal experience, there's certain feelings get stuck in my body, and the EFT has helped. Now, granted, those who are listening, I encourage you to find what helps and works for you, um, and also um, when you go to the community, when you go to, let's say, you go to the church, for instance, um, expectations and what should or should not, um, it may be helpful to define them, and also, um, there's no quick fix from my experience. There's no one magic solution. These are just things that I've noticed from personal experience that have helped me in some aspects, but it's not 2 plus 2 equals 4. And the one thing is, you're not dealing with an equation; you're dealing with you, uh, a complex individual who has context and experiences from the past, but and aspirations. What is better for me may look very different from those around me. So remember that. I find that to be helpful. Um, I know that Winston Churchill said it this way. I find this is interesting. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. Um, it's like the ebb and flow. I feel this quote shares a little more deep, shares a deepness, an idea of giving in life uh, has a more positive, can have a more positive impact. Um, and it's not always about what we get. I feel that at least, but I told this line pretty carefully because um, I would even encourage on the other side of this quote is be able to receive a gift. As adults, we can get a little bit stubborn, hard-headed, prideful. Um, it's good to remember that to give. When it comes to community, give your time. Be kind. It doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be. It just a lot of times what I've experienced, what I've seen, I'll just say personally is some of the best gifts when someone is really struggling is to make them feel human again. And tangible is very helpful, but without community, without connection, um, it can lose its desire to the desired goal to help this individual um, find value in life. It's kind of, if the person doesn't feel valued or doesn't feel like a value, that tangible, as a hypothetical illustration, that tangible resource or monetary gift is very helpful, but at least from my experience, the person again feels that their value is elsewhere or is not enough. That tangible resource only lasts for so long. Person themselves um, has a choice of stepping forward onto of finding value from within. And it's very easy for me, and I'll say this in caveat, easy for me to say. Um, because I'm not even addressing those who are struggling with substances and maybe lost a loved one and you're just struggling. And I know there's no perfect answer to this, and a lot of my guests come from different necks of the woods. Some things may be said that may be more helpful than others, but at the very least, find a community that you can actually say these three words: I need help. Everything I said today may be helpful, may not be helpful. Maybe you're not in this mindset, maybe you're not in this thought yet. But if you're able to get to a community or be in a community that you could honestly feel that you could say those three words, then I feel that me saying, oh, you need this community, that's something you need to decide what community is most appropriate for you. I feel as long as you can say, I need help in the community, then that's a good starting point. That's a good, but like I said, a lot of our lives are in constant, incomplete phase. But I encourage you to find a community that you can actually say these three words when you need to. There's an African proverb. It says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You're on your own clock. I know I am. If I looked at my life with a microscope, I would say, well, he did a lot of things late. I was sick for several years. Things were all delayed. And even me saying those words kind of make it seem that because they're delayed, and you fill in the blank, I am less this. I am less that. I am less valued. Then sometimes, unfortunately, a person like me, as an illustration, can believe that I just have to catch up. I have to get more things. I can get more things quickly. And I said, no, I don't believe so. From my personal experience, I feel that defining who your community is vital. Who are your friends? Who are the people around you that you can actually ask the question, I need help, and not feel that you know, we all will feel like a burden, especially if we're feeling that low. But if we're able to say those words, that's important. And we're able, and then on the other receiving end, when we're receiving those words, what do we do? Do we dismiss it? Do we belittle? Or do we just get help for the person? Do I help them find help? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a provider. I'm not this. So what can I do? I can listen. I can be kind. Um, why do you think community should matter to us in our overall wellness? Because we need each other. No matter how well adjusted, self aware, successful person you are, you will need a community. If you don't trust your community and things start to fall apart, saying those three words, I need help, maybe seem heavier and heavier. I encourage those during this National Wellness Month to be reminded of the importance of our communities, recognizing that. What would I want people to remember this month? I would want people to remember that to support one another. There's something about being present. Not having all the answers is okay. And when it comes to community, what would you want people to remember this month, the National Wellness Month? That you're important. Fill in the blank, whatever your name is, John, Sarah, Amy, you're important. Now, in an external side of the world, you might have burned some bridges, you might have hurt some people, you might have hurt yourself. But, asking those questions, I need help, getting the resources, finding and working towards something. Reminding that your value really stems internally, not externally, at least from my experience, will help more along the way. Because then your value is not hinged on something that's outside of you. Eventually, it's not that you're just gonna automatically feel, oh, I feel that I'm valued. It's nothing like you can't force it, but eventually, if you're honest, from my personal experience, it's not that I'm ever like I am valued, but more that I know that when I value myself in whatever degree internally, it's from my experience more sustained and more stable than if I were to hinge it on some aspiration. Only if I get this, only if this person, or I get this level of recognition, or what have you. It may be a motivation and give you maybe some energy to work towards something, but at the end of the day, I'm reminded that I'm still Robert, then you're still you. Final thoughts, take care of yourself. We're human. I find that humor is healing at times, and don't take yourself too seriously in the sense that we're exceptional human beings, and unexceptional at the same time. Find a community that you can actually say, I need help. And even furthermore, I encourage you find a community that you can actually say, oh, I made a mistake. That you could be a little bit more honest. That you don't have to be seen as doing well, even though you're not doing well. Just being you. Um, it could be a few friends, it could be a few friends and family member, whoever that is. I do encourage you to find them, because accountability is only a bad word if it's not a safe environment that you feel. You can share this. And again, I want to thank you for those who are listening, watching today. And also, just if you want to be a guest, I've said this before, I just love hearing from all aspects. This is not a podcast that proselytizes. I know the name may seem like Revive Ministries. Yes, I'm from the Christian faith. I do find comfort in that. But this is purely an outreach. So if you have a story or you're interested in sharing, the motivation of this podcast is to keep the conversation going. A lot of these hard topics get thrown under the rug. And I feel that there is comfort that we're still talking. So again, thank you for listening. I want to remind you that Revive Ministry stays updated on all things. You can stay. Let me just rephrase that. ReviveMinistriesFL.com is our website. So that platform, even though it's not always updated, it does have all the audio links for the actual podcast episodes, and also has links to the YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube and you find us and you see where all the videos are, I encourage you to subscribe. And those two areas, Facebook, yeah, I have a little bit on there, but I would say if you want to listen and to watch, website first. YouTube also is a great hub. Again, this is goodbye from Revive Ministries, leaving you with this last quote. It's from Coretta Scott King, and it says, "The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate action of its members."